on this episode of Indiana Education Insight.
Construction is supposed to be fun. No one wants to be in a contentious relationship for 18 months or whatever that may be.
Right.
So we're always looking on how to alleviate any of those issues and, like I said, make the projects fun for everybody.
Every week, the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents is taking you inside today's Indiana education collaboration and tomorrow's education trends. We're staying on the pulse of public school innovators throughout Indiana and beyond. Join our conversation and contribute to our upcoming topics at iapssin.org/podcast. Here's your host, Dr. J.T Coopman.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Indiana Education Insight. I'm Dr. J.T Coopman, Executive Director of the IAPSS. This podcast is being delivered by the IAPSS team and produced by our friends at Edge Media Studios. As the Executive Director of IAPSS, I'm proud to bring you this weekly show featuring Indiana education innovators from all over our great state, from students to teachers to superintendents. Each week, we'll be discussing trending topics in the public education space and bringing in a variety of Indiana education innovators to hear their perspective. We're also talking with higher education leaders and educators at the state level, working together as proactive public education advocates. As with any organization, it takes skilled leadership to be successful, and that is one of the main missions of IAPSS, developing great public education leaders. We're always excited to have experienced and passionate educators joining the show. So let's get to today's conversation.
Topics and trends in Indiana education.
Today's guest is Mr. Dan Lawson, Senior Business Development Manager for Meyer Najem Construction Company. After college, Mr. Lawson served 4 years in the United States Air Force and has been in local construction industry for over 15 years. His experience involves K-12 schools and universities, so having the ability to look at education from various lenses is very important. Mr. Lawson and his partners have been tremendous assets to public education in Indiana. Let's find out how he views some of the issues facing public schools today. Mr. Lawson, we are thrilled to have you join us on today's podcast. So if you could tell us a little bit about Meyer Najem and your role in the company.
Sure. Well, JT, on behalf of Meyer Najem and myself, thanks for having us today. This was good timing. Meyer Najem had turned 30 years this year in June.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was founded by Carl Meyer and Anthony Najem back in 1987. So over the last 30 years, they've gone from 2 employees to 105 strong now. We have gone from roughly $50 million in annual revenues over the last 5 years to now roughly $200 million.
Absolutely
fabulous.
fabulous.
And thank you. And most of that work is CM at risk, which we're going to be talking about today, about 85%. And again, 80% of that is with repeat clients.
Okay.
So it's been a great ride, and again, happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Now, what is your role with Meyer Najem, and how long have you been with the company?
So I've been with Meyer Najem 3.5 years. My role is Senior Business Development Manager. The markets I focus on are K through 12, higher ed, and municipalities.
Okay.
And I think, as you know, again, CM at Risk became available to the
Right.
K through 12 industry and all other public entities on July 1 of this year. So I like to consider my role in the K through 12 now as one of educating the educators,
Okay.
trying to get out to the superintendents, business managers, CFOs, facility directors, and talk to them about this new delivery method that's available to them.
So obviously you have an interest in the K-12 market and education in general. So how can you help schools and superintendents, and what are some of the most prolific things that you see facing schools today?
Well, as I travel the state of Indiana, which is primarily the market I focus on in K through 12,
Right.
Again, I'm meeting with superintendents, business managers, CFOs, directors of facilities, and as we have conversations, one of the common themes I get from all those is that they all want a trusted advisor on their capital projects.
Right.
Obviously, all these folks are they're stewards of the taxpayer capital. And so again, I think with, I'm out just educating them on CM at risk. And I think the most prolific way we help them is due to our expertise, probably one of the industry experts in that delivery method.
Okay.
So that's
when you're talking with superintendents, obviously superintendents answer to school boards. So what should school boards be looking for in the construction management industry?
school boards. Again, as I meet with a lot of school board officials as well, I go back and say, that they need a trusted advisor, someone, because one of the when I talk to these people and ask them what issues they've had in the past or on other construction projects, usually they bring up items such as didn't hit schedule.
Right.
They have problems with change orders, lack of communication. And so I think that's what the school boards need to look for, are the companies like Meyer Najem
Right.
that have that reputation and making sure that those things don't happen. And at the end of the day, it's, construction is supposed to be fun. No one wants to be in a contentious relationship for,
Right.
18 months or whatever that may be.
Right.
So we're always looking on how to alleviate any of those issues and, like I said, make the projects fun for everybody.
So this is a new concept in K-12 as of July 1st of this year. The legislature put this into effect, I believe, 2 years ago, and the first year was higher ed, and then this year they included the K-12 market. Can you tell us why this particular delivery method may be better than others that we've had in the past?
Yes. So this delivery method, again, like you said, was put in for K through 12 and all other public entities on July 1 of 17. It actually came out in July 1 of 14 with House Bill 1196 for, like you said, all higher ed public institutions in the state. So IU, Purdue, Ball State, they've been using the method for 3 years now and have had tremendous success with it. And the reason why is it's an open book, collaborative process.
Sure.
The entities get to see where every dollar they're spending is going. Whatever amount the projects end up coming in under budget, those savings go back to the owner, the construction manager, the owner, the design team. They're all on board from day one together. And earlier I mentioned that some of the problems were the issues with schedules, communication, change orders. Well, this methodology eliminates all of those issues.
Okay.
So and I'm passionate about this. I grew up in the industry as a project manager for about 13 of the 15 years, and I've had the opportunity to manage projects in all different delivery methods, and this one always seems to be the most beneficial at the end of the day.
Well, and knowing a little bit about building schools, in the past we've had an architect, an engineer, a contractor, subcontractors, and sometimes there would be a construction manager of some kind. And so there were contentious relationships because if there was a problem with a project, they would always, well, it's not my fault, it's your fault. And
Correct.
So CM at risk is different than that in what way?
So CM at risk, the school, basically give you an idea of how it works. The school board or school corporation would hire their design team,
Okay.
Professional services, get them on board, and then if CM at risk is done properly, they'll get their construction manager on board through an RFP process, which is outlined in the House Bill 1196 and also through Indiana Code 5-32. They get their CM on board immediately after their design team. And so what that allows us to do is work with the owner and the design team from day one through each iteration of the process,
Okay.
starting from conceptual to schematic to design development into construction documents. And at the time, we're providing budgets at each stage of the process, providing value engineering, offering up solutions to constructability problems that we may see in the drawings. So that way, by the time you go to put a shovel in the ground, all those items, like I said, the schedule, the change orders, the communication, those things are virtually eliminated.
Okay.
So at that point during the project, any change orders should be owner-driven or something unforeseen is the goal. So that's why I think that's, much better than a design, bid, build, delivery method where drawings are done, you put it out for public bid, you got to take the lowest, most responsive bidder, and anything that's not in the drawings is now a change order right off the bat. If the contractors in those scenarios, they save any money, that goes in their pocket as additional profit.
Right.
Doesn't come back to the owner. So that's why I'm passionate about the CM at risk, because it develops a team approach to the project.
Right. So a lot of that work is done up front before the shovel goes into the ground.
Yes,
and
100%.
That's the key to the success of this, is making sure that the design is good. And you mentioned value engineering is have everything ordered in advance so that it's on site at the proper time in the project. So other states have had this going on for quite some time. Why is Indiana late to the game?
So for me, this is purely my take on it, is just that the conservatism, I think, and Midwest conservatism, and especially in Indiana.
Right.
And I think a lot of again, when I'm meeting with folks, I get a lot of, well, this is the way we've always done it. When I ask them, well, why would you do design, bid, build when you've got now an option to do something that's open book? And
Right.
And again, I get a lot of, well, this is the way we've always done it, and we're going to continue to do it that way. So I think that's just kind of been the holdup on it. But I'm starting to see, especially with the public universities, that they're having great success. Purdue just came out with 4 more projects that they're going to do CM at risk, and Hamilton Southeastern has now been one of the first to put a project out for CM at risk. So I think this is really going to start gaining some traction here in the next year or so.
Well, certainly, since it's a new concept in the state, and people are creatures of habit, so to
Yes.
speak. So it's going to take a little bit of education. And it's going to take some projects where people are going to see successes, and then you can point to those successes and say, well, this is how this delivery method has helped, whether it's a university or a public school district. And so to me, the concept sounds like a great concept if we want school districts to have great projects that save the school district and the taxpayers money. So would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And, the CM at risk is not a new method or model by any stretch of the imagination. We've been doing it in the private sector for, 20, 30 years. So now there's a few different nuances in the CM at risk for public that, like I said, are outlined in the House bill and the Indiana Code 5-32.
Sure.
For instance, a construction manager can only self-perform up to 20% of the total value of the work. So just things like that, a lot of nuances that I think our audience can read upon. I don't want to spend time and go through every one of them, but again, like I said, we're 85% of what we do is CM at risk because it's such a great delivery model.
Are performance bonds still a part of this project?
Yes, they are. Payment performance bonds have to be issued before the project starts.
Okay.
And the way it works is, and what's nice about the CM at risk is the RFP process, where if the school corporation doesn't feel comfortable with design build or design bid build or even CM agency, which we do a lot of that as well.
Sure.
They get an opportunity to research some different companies and choose who they want to work with.
Right.
So again, that's another, it makes it a little more flexible for the school corporation.
Okay. A couple of years ago, Indiana moved from, basically it became a right-to-work state. And how has that affected any of this, if it has any at all?
Well, in the construction industry, it really hasn't affected a lot because right now, all subcontractors are so busy with work. Luckily, the construction industry is extremely fruitful right now, and we're hoping it's going to stay that way for another few years.
Sure.
But what happened was during the downturn back in 2007 and 2008, we lost a lot of our skilled trades. They left the industry, never came back. And unfortunately, a lot of them are telling their kids not to get into the construction industry because of what happened.
Sure.
So again, we're really short. So I don't think right now the right to work is really having a specific effect one way or the other, just because the amount of work that's out there and the shortage of labor.
Well, that's probably another topic for another time.
Yes.
But we're absolutely seeing shortages in skilled labor and students not going into vocational trades and those kinds of things. And I believe that it's creating a big issue, whether it be manufacturing or construction or whatever that skilled trade is. How can we get kids interested in the labor market that relates to a vocation or a skilled trade?
So great question. We talk about this all the time within our industry with other contractors, subcontractors. And I know there's some organizations out there that are really trying to get out in front of the younger kids and explain to them that, being an electrician's a great job.
Oh, it is. Yep.
Being a plumber, being whatever, being a trade, being able to work with your hands it's a great thing to be able to do. So, we do certain things where we'll go to schools and talk to kids and
Really?
and try to get them interested in the construction industry. Any of our school projects that we do right now at Brownsburg, we're out there working. Hamilton Southeastern, we'll let kids take tours of the job site and show them that construction's a fun industry and there's nothing wrong with being that guy out in the field and making something happen.
Well, I've seen this coming for quite some time as an educator. I have never ascribed to the philosophy that every kid needs to go to college. Now, we want a well-educated citizenry. That's why we exist. But we also have various forms of what education looks like and what it can provide. And you're absolutely right. These jobs provide more than a living wage for families. And there's such a shortage right now. They can pretty much work in whatever venue they would like to work in.
Right.
But it's a different industry than it was even 20 years ago. It's a safe industry. It's not near. I mean, obviously there's some dirt and some dust and those kinds of things, but that's part of the nature of construction. I certainly hope that we can get kids interested, and certainly if the Superintendent's Association can work with the construction industry, we would welcome that opportunity, whatever that looks like. And so I agree with you, and we would like to work with the Department of Workforce Development, construction industry, construction roundtable, whatever that is,
Sure.
To help your industry have highly qualified people on these job sites. So,
Well, thanks for that offer.
I agree with you.
But kind of real quick, a little story going back to that is when I first came out of the military and was getting into the construction industry, someone had asked me, construction? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
And I did construction in the military, and I looked at him and I said, well, where would you go to school? Where would you shop? Where would you live? Where would you drive? Where would you, if you didn't have the construction industry?
Right.
And you kind of saw that light bulb on their head go, yeah, you're right. Maybe it is a pretty important industry.
Yeah.
So I like to share that with people that, there's not much you can do without those in construction.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we certainly have highly qualified engineers, designing these buildings and doing all of the things that are required. But we also need the competent contractors to take that design out of the ground and into a structure that is safe and secure for patrons or students, especially to go into. So
Exactly.
I agree with you.
And that's how we like to view our projects, actually, at K through 12, is that at the end of the day, the students are the real customer.
Yep.
I mean, you got the school board, you got the taxpayers, but it's really the students at the end of the day that need the quality facilities to be able to learn.
Absolutely. Well, safe, secure, and that's how we want our students to go to school, is safe, secure facilities, as well as tremendous learning environments. And there's a lot to a learning environment in how it's designed and how the kids feel about it. And there's just so much that goes into that in the K-12 market that all of you recognize. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
So what in closing, school boards and superintendents, what should they be looking toward if they're contemplating a construction project?
Again, I think they need to, make sure they fully understand the House Bill 1196. Understand IC code 5-32.
Sure.
And then, like I said, they really just need to do their research and understand, who are the competent, who are the strong construction managers out there. There's a difference between a construction manager and a general contractor.
Right.
So Meyer Najem, we consider ourselves professional construction managers. That's what we do. That's what we're industry experts for, is to come in and manage the process for the owner. And like I said, just make sure they understand full well that the importance is getting your team on board as early as possible.
Right.
And moving forward that way.
And just so that our audience has a better understanding, what's the difference between what we have now in construction management versus construction management at risk?
So right now, the construction management right now is construction manager as agent is it's a very popular delivery method. Again, we're performing CM agency at Hamilton Southeastern and Brownsburg. And what happens with CM agency is that we're still managing the process, but the school corporation still holds all the subcontracts with the subcontractors.
Okay.
So we help the school corporation bid it out. We manage the process, help manage the schedule. But at the end of the day, it's still between the contracts are still held by the school corporation.
Well, and at least in my little simple mind, one of the major differences is the fact that with a CM, you can still have change orders.
Yes.
And change orders are the things that cost you. I mean, you have money set aside for change orders, but at the end of the day, that's going to cost you money in the project. Whereas with CM at risk, change orders go away.
Correct.
Okay.
So quickly, the way we manage a CM agent project is very similar to how we manage our CM at risk. We staff it correctly. We're just not a reporting agency in our CMA role.
Right.
So the big difference for us when it goes to CM at risk is, like you said, now we're up front on the design. We're eliminating change orders before they happen.
Right.
And now we hold all the subcontracts.
Yep.
So it virtually takes all the risk off the school corporation and puts it onto us.
Okay.
And again, lets each piece of the team do what they're experts at.
Sure.
The designers, they're experts at the vision, the drawings, putting the design together.
Yep.
And we're the experts in the field.
Right.
And so, like I said, it really allows us to do what we're good at in each phase of the project.
Well, I think that this sounds like a tremendous asset for Indiana Public Schools, and we appreciate what you're doing to help Indiana Public Schools and our taxpayers save money by bringing CM at risk to the table. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this. And
Thank you.
Dan, I appreciate everything that you're doing for us. So I'd like to thank Mr. Lawson for being our guest on IAPSS's edition of Indiana Education Insight. Now it's time to wrap up this episode with my take on the current state of affairs in Indiana education.
Dr. JT's closing comments.
Unfortunately, even though we have so much research about the fact that leadership matters regardless of the organization, but especially in schools, just like we need a commitment to high-quality public schools and educators, we need to make an investment in high-quality leadership programs for our public schools as well. It's my hope that we can demonstrate the value of leadership development programs to our legislators and get our state leaders to contribute to these programs on behalf of Hoosier communities. Much of this research has been dismissed by our legislators. However, I see these investments in our children and in our state and not as an expenditure. Perhaps we can pursue this issue and others in another segment. On our next show, August 21st, we welcome Dr. Brian Smith, Executive Director for the Indiana School Boards Association, and perhaps he can provide some additional insight into the State House and education. Join us for that and more on the next Insight into Indiana Education. Thanks for being part of education, and please stand up for Indiana Public Schools.